It's today in EVE Online, Thursday, February 20th, 2020. So we're going to talk about wormholes today. We have some patch notes that came out. We'll review those. And then we're going to dive into Inner Hell's eviction and see what went on. We'll try to see what went on both sides because they both seem to have different stories. All right, first thing we want to do, we're going to go ahead and skip over some of the most violent systems and some of the SOV moves. Not a lot has changed, so there's not much to review there. So we'll get right to it. Patch notes. My friend Arya is here. What's up, Arya?
Hello, good morning.
Morning.
So we had a patch this morning. Some patch notes went out, and one of the biggest changes is fixing a hole in the war deck mechanics. And this has been a topic for the last few days where a group could force a corporation to become more eligible by dropping a structure. Most structures in your corp require roles, but there's been one exception. The gantry for the customs office does not require roles up until today. And that meant that you could join a new player group, drop this structure, and immediately flip them to be war eligible. And players in the community have been asking, is this an exploit? Why doesn't CCP declare an exploit? But now we know the answer. The patch today changes that behavior. This structure now requires roles.
All right, they fixed that hole. Now, we talked about that, a week ago? Because there was a really, really big high-sec alliance that all of a sudden broke apart, and we were curious to why it broke apart. We found out that they were war decked, so to save the corporations that were a part of that alliance, they jettisoned them. And that brought to our attention there was this hole in the mechanics that allowed this to happen. And so we kind of talked about that and turned that into CSM and to CCP both. And not that we made the change, but exposing the change was part of it, I think. So that's really good that they actually fixed it right away. Because we know it wasn't part of their intention to leave some kind of a loophole for the war deck mechanic. So it looks like that got patched up.
There were some other changes in respect to wormholes. One says fixed an issue causing too many C5 and C6 connections to appear. I know some folks in the wormholes were saying they were seeing 10, 11 wormhole connections in their C5 or C6. So it looks like they may have lowered that a bit. They also fixed a problem which causes larger ships to land too close to the wormhole after jumping through. This way they can, I guess, jump back. I believe that was something either that was discussed earlier, that was something Talos was looking at. Mm-hmm. They fixed another issue. It has to do with incursion LP failing. And then they have a line in the patch notes that says New Eden has been made a better place for everyone. And that's always that mysterious line. Well, it turns out there wasn't another change to wormholers that may fit that line. When you jump through a wormhole, you were able to activate your prop mod, your MWD, to increase your mass and help close a wormhole. That's been removed. When you jump through the wormhole, it does not use that inflated mass anymore. And the net effect of this is it's harder to roll holes in wormhole space now.
This is a big deal. Wormholes close. They only allow a certain amount of mass to pass through. So every ship that passes through decreases its wormhole stability. And so the bigger the mass that passes through, the more it deducts from the overall mass that hole can take. So if you can take a little ship and inflate yourself by increasing your mass by using a prop mod, you would take out the wormhole faster. That's kind of how that worked. So they've eliminated that, it sounds like. I'm going to introduce Colby and Teddy. Teddy will be back in a second, but Colby's with us. He's a wormholer. So we'll be talking about these changes right now. What's up, Colby?
Yeah, fair enough. How you doing? So, I mean, essentially, when some of us are talking about it a little bit earlier, because us personally, we started rage rolling like straight after downtime today, and we learned about this change really quickly. So basically,
wait, was this something
about rolling?
Was this something you had to discover, or was it in the patch notes?
We pretty sure it wasn't in the patch notes, as far as what I've seen. We pretty much discovered it straight after downtime, and we were obviously the first couple of wormholes. We were wondering why the hell is this wormhole not rolling essentially with our capital. But yeah, as you were saying with rolling the holes, it's also not only affecting the capitals, but rolling off frigate holes. So, which will make a difference in terms of some of these evictions that are going on as well. People won't really be able to close up these frigate holes. So, there will always be that entrance sitting there that will allow people to bring in pods and interceptors and that at pretty much all times. Because people used to use heavy interdiction cruisers to close off those wormholes. But now that they can't use the prop mod trick after you hit jump to use your prop mod, it no longer takes that mass. So you essentially can no longer roll the frigate holes, which will make a pretty big difference in getting allies into your wormhole for some of these situations.
Yeah, I want to say I saw messages within an hour after downtime where wormholers had discovered this undocumented change. So they were on it real quick.
Yes, yep, people were talking about it for a fair while. I think I started that conversation.
Yeah, well, you are Australian time zone, so you play as soon as the server comes back up. Well, that's interesting.
Yes, absolutely.
How
Yeah, it's
big a
10 p.m.
change?
for me with downtime.
10 p.m. Oh, right in the middle. How long is downtime now? Is it like 7 minutes?
I think it was about 5 to 6 today, something around that.
Okay. It used to be 30 minutes a long time ago. Then they chopped it down to 15. Then they got it down to, I think more recently, like 7 minutes. And 5 to 6 is really not that bad, is it?
No, not at all. You get those extended downtimes every now and then that they advertise, but for the most part, yeah, they're pretty short and sweet.
All right. So how big a change is this? The
Well,
mass.
essentially, once we got used to it, I mean, essentially to get 100% success rate, it's just capital and two rolling battleships in, two rolling battleships back, uh, hot. So that means hot is prop mod on. So they go hot, in out, two of them, and then the capital comes back in, and that's the whole rolled. So it essentially just requires an extra two alts to be sitting there with it for the most part. I mean, maybe some people and will experiment and maybe come up with something better, but for the most part, if you keep it simple, just one capital and two rolling battleships, and you've got no problem.
Is that still the case? Is that what you could do now, or is that how it used to be done?
That's what you can do now.
Okay.
No, that's what you can do now. So the 5 to 5 connections in those very large holes, you could just put a capital in hot, but you needed to use that trick. You needed to hit jump and then spam your prop mod afterwards, and it would then read the mass as you went through. But now it reads your mass as you hit jump, so you can no longer uh, sort of trick it to read the mass later.
Oh, that's how it does. Because once you hit jump, it knocks off the prop mod.
Yeah, so capitals can't jump with their prop mod on. So you can't have your prop mod on and then hit jump. It'll tell you that you're too big for the wormhole. So that's why you would hit jump first and then spam your prop mod. And your prop mod would cycle while you were in the animation of jumping through the wormhole, and it would register your mass then.
Oh, I see. So it was the other way around.
Yes.
You jump,
Yes. But now it
and then add mass to yourself by hitting your prop
Yes.
mod. Okay.
Yes. Exactly.
And now it just says you're jumping. What's the rating? That's what I'll take. So anything after that just doesn't get calculated.
Exactly. So now essentially capitals can only go in cold, which is prop mod off. So whatever their base mass is with plates and whatever, that's what it counts.
Mm-hmm. So then that's no longer useful. So your new formula is what? What did you say? 2 battleships or?
2 battleships along with the capital. Yes.
Oh, I see. Oh, that's interesting. I think that's a big change, and the reason is, of course, from a non-wormholer, there was a controversy a long time ago. Maybe it wasn't too long ago, maybe a year ago or two. And it was that there was a change made to the heavy interdictor, which is called a hick. And yeah, this was 2 years ago. And the, what do they call it? collateral damage was wormholers that used to use the hick to roll holes. And so wormholers were furious at the CSM that mainly composed of nullsec representatives at the time. And so wormholers were basically saying and thinking, you guys totally like forgot about us. So one of the CSM guys, Brisk Rubal, who was like a celebrity CSM, came back and said, I'm going to represent you guys. And I told them that this was going to hurt you guys. And they said they're going to do something for you, so don't worry about it. So he became the lightning rod for all the criticism from wormholers. And ever since, Brisk has had a love-hate relationship with wormholers. I think that's how it worked. So, but that controversy was based on the way the hick was used in order to roll holes or to destroy wormholes by decreasing their mass until they evaporated. So if it meant such a big deal back then, I figure that any changes to this kind of dynamic is a big deal. I don't know if was it still a big deal even like yesterday?
It's kind of like something that people have just gotten so used to, I think. And it's like a lot of people in high class wormholes. I know most people just love that whole capital in out done. You know what I mean? So it just adds a little bit more to it, I suppose. And particularly some of those much smaller wormhole corporations
Mm-hmm.
that don't have the alts and don't have the characters sometimes, like particularly if they want to rage roll for some content or something and they've only got, 3 people or something, and they're going to have to commit another two characters in battleships to just roll the holes, let alone actually find their content. You know what I mean? Some of us slightly bigger corporations and that, like we make do, and then the really big corporations like Inner Hell and that sort of stuff. I mean, you know, it won't really make much of a difference with some of the groups. Chuck 2 rolling materials in, it'll be just as fast as anything.
Yeah. Guys will find a way to evolve. I just wonder, since that was such a big controversy a couple years ago, if the mechanics around rolling holes and using prop mods to increase mass was it still a big deal for wormholers, or had they, because they seem to have settled down, I guess. But anyway, Toxic Apollo, who's in this channel, also says he thinks it's a bug since there's no documentation for it. It's really interesting these days. You can't tell what a deliberate change is from some kind of a bug because they're trying to surprise us. So I don't know. What do you think? Is this a change that was needed, or could it be a bug?
Yeah, some other people were talking about that too. That's an interesting. They might have, because it could have also happened when they were adjusting the capital spawns from 5K, like that little glitch with their spawns and that as well. Um, so some people were thinking it could have come with that, but it's it's so hard to say because it's been a thing for so long. Why is it fixed now, as opposed to 2 years ago? You know?
Yeah.
There's a line in the patch notes that references something changed without details, so I'm a little hesitant to say, oh, it's a bug or not. It's hard to say. I am curious if this will affect nullsec, because one of the things one of the more annoying things is Titan Pilot is someone approaches you with their MWD on and hits bridge, and they use a whole bunch of fuel they shouldn't be using. So if they now finally, when you make a session change, if they're going to lower your mass down and not count your MWD, does that mean that person will use less fuel when they jump to the Titan?
No, because the micro warp drive will still be active. The change to wormholes, like in terms of the micro warp drive, we what they've adjusted is we would hit the prop mod after we hit jump. If he's already approaching you with the micro warp drive on, then it's on, and if he hits jump, then it's not going to change anything there.
Okay, if you're just catching up to us, we are talking about patch notes that just came out. This just, I guess, this downtime, and we're talking about some of the changes. The most surprising one is, Arya, can you explain what it is?
Right. So the biggest changes was the first was the gantry. This was the structure folks were using to force a corporation to become war eligible. That structure did not require roles, just like unlike any other structure you would launch as corp requires a certain role to launch a SOV structure, to launch even a giant secure container. And the gantry for the customs office required no roles. And this is how groups were forcing other groups into becoming war eligible. So the change came out today. It requires roles now. So that is now fixed. The gantry will operate just like any other structure when you launch for corp. You need corp roles. And the other change that was made was one that's not really documented. And when you jump through which affects how wormholers are closing wormholes by preventing them from activating the MWD just before jumping through a hole, or just after pressing jump, so that your ship's mass is not inflated. So it makes it harder to roll holes.
Right. So that's a big deal because that was a often used technique. And about 2 years ago, it became a big problem when nullsec CSM changed, or didn't change, but CCP changed the mechanic. The wormholers that didn't have representation at the time yelled at CSM for not considering their needs for the HIC that was a ship that was used for doing that sort of thing. And the HIC was changed for nullsec or PvP purposes in known space. So that was the big controversy a few years ago. So I was wondering if that was still a controversy today, because they seem to have eliminated that whole technique of turning on your propulsion mod to increase your mass in order to collapse a hole quicker. So that's where we're at. Where do you see where it says the change was made? Because I'm looking at gameplay fixes. Oh, it's right there. Fixed a problem which caused larger ships to land. Oh, this is the other thing, though. Let's read that one out. Fixed a problem which caused larger ships to land too close to a wormhole after jumping through. Guess what that is? That is the dreadnought that landed only 5K away from the hole. And I think that's been fixed. That was a bug.
Right. So if you're going to jump a large ship through a wormhole, you have to reapproach the wormhole.
Right.
I guess that's the intention.
Well, if you jump a capital ship through a wormhole, the heavier it is, the further you are away from the wormhole. The reason for that is if you jump a ship through and it's right next to the wormhole on the other side, you jump it right back. And then you keep jumping through, collapsing a hole or getting it to a critical point quicker. That makes it very easy to collapse a hole or to keep it in critical so that a fleet can't fly through it, for instance. So what CCP did a long time ago was to say the bigger the ship, the further from the hole you land. So when you jump through it, you're supposed to land 15K away. That means you have to slow boat it back to the hole to jump through. It makes it more dangerous for a big ship. It also takes longer. But the problem was the dreadnought, for some reason, was only landing 5K away like it used to. So that was a bug. It was brought, again, we talked about it here. We talked about it Sunday with CCP Rise. It had been already reported to CSM, and so CSM had reported to CCP. So the bug was going to be taken care of anyway, but we brought it up last weekend, and it's good to see it's in the patch notes now. So there's another thing that we were able to talk about and see some action on it really quickly. Again, we're not taking any credit for it, but it's nice to be aware of things in the game, and it's nice to see CCP cleaning things up rather quickly. But again, I'm looking for what you said, because we're debating now, is this a bug, the propulsion module, and I don't see where it says something changed, Arya, that you were talking about.
The last statement is a vague statement. New Eden has been made a better place for everyone. And that's typically when they change something without giving us details. Now, whether or not it's this or something else, it's anyone's guess.
New Eden made a better place for everyone. Wow, what a statement. I have no idea what they're talking about. So who knows? Maybe it's a bug, this propulsion thing. Maybe it's not. It'd be interesting to find out. Later on, we'll have to find out. All right, so those are the patch notes. Is there anything else? I'm looking here. The C5 to C6 wormhole connections appear. There was an issue because literally, I think CCP fat fingered a 0 onto the percentage of how much the increase in wormhole connections would happen. It was supposed to be like a 6%, and it was actually a 60% because he accidentally hit 0. So if there have been thousands of wormhole connections to a C5 or C6, it probably wasn't supposed to be that high, and that might be what that adjustment was. That would be an easy, database fix adjustment. So I'm sure it could happen within these patch notes. Yep, there it
I
is.
It's
think
led to
CCP
some
Rise
crazy
joked
change.
about renaming himself CCP Fat Finger.
Yeah.
It's led to some crazy chains. We had a hole last night that had 12 connections coming off it, one of which did a loop back around to a C6 that was connected directly to our home. So yeah, we had a nice little circle going on. It was great.
So it was like going out the front door, walking around the house, and coming in the back door.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you had another 12 connections to choose from as well.
That's hilarious. Yeah, well, that was reduced probably by a factor of 10. So look for those connections to stabilize. There were too many before in these last few days.
Yeah, it's nice for some extra ways and means and that, but there is such thing as a little bit too much because
Yeah.
some poor person's got to scan it all.
All right, another fix is the PvE. The Guardians Gala venues are no longer spawned in the rookie or career systems. That's kind of funny if they were, because these things are pretty deadly, and if these things are spawning in systems that have a lot of newbie players, that's going to be a lot of dead player ships. Maybe it only happened once or twice. All right, well, those are the fixes. Check out the patch notes. You can find those at eveonline.com. I don't know. Google it. It's home articles, patch notes, and that's what the list of patch notes is. Or you can go to Discord, Talking in Stations Discord, and look in the links channel. Okay. What else do we want to talk about? If nothing else, then we need to talk about what happened with. There's a huge. Oh, I hate to see executions. Pass that up. I don't see a video from Inner Hell, although they make videos. They make some good ones. I don't see
There is a
one.
video out of the eviction.
There is a video of the eviction?
Yep, I can find it for you in a sec.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so we're going to talk about an eviction that just happened in Wormhole Space. It's going to be a Wormhole show today, mostly. And that was... I'm going to blow it because I'm not sure who got evicted. They have different names. I think it was... Well, it wasn't Little Red Riding Hood or whatever that was. I'll find
No,
out.
it is really us. It is really them, and it is really us is another group, like the bigger cohort of them, and then they got obviously a bunch of allies that came and helped them. But it was essentially it is really us. Their home C2 and also C5. They got evicted by Inner Hell, and along with Hard Knocks and Laserhawks.
Yeah, so what have you heard happened from the non-Inner Hell perspective, if anything? Do you know?
I've read some stuff on Reddit and a few different perspectives, but as I'm by no means a professional or know too much about it, but from the outside perspective of what I know, um, Inner Hell, along with their normal allies like Parabellum and such, they started evicting. It is really us in their C2, and they started to get. I'm not entirely sure how they got in all the allies and that, and how whole control went, how smoothly it went the entire time. But they did get in a lot of assistance, and from what I know, Inner Hell then decided to bat phone for Hard Knocks and Laserhawks to assist them, which was all happening during our last wormhole stream, which was Sunday, I think, or Saturday, something like that.
Hmm.
Um, but it was actually during that exact time that I believe HK were and Laserhawks were on the move
Yeah,
to get into that hole.
we had an HK guy with us, Laura Secco.
Yes, and he was
He was
in the middle
maneuvering.
of that move up.
Yeah.
Yes, so they started moving in at that time, and I mean, as you've got the battle report up, what was it like 250 v 250 or 250 something like that, 251 something like that. It was quite a big fight that went on, um, and I've heard again on Reddit and that reading a few different perspectives of how the fight um, could have, should have, would have gone, all the great stuff. But in the end, uh, Inner Hell, HK, and Laserhawks ended up taking it down. I think it was they.
So they prevailed.
Yeah, absolutely. But Inner Hell and that they had one of their biggest IS losses from all the battle reports I've seen from all their evictions. This one was by far the, if you want to say close, but closest fight that they've ever had. Really, they lost. Was it 70 something billion, and they killed about 180 or something like that. So that was one of the closest fights so far.
So I'm trying to understand wormhole politics, and I guess what I thought how it worked is a group might attacker might call in allies if they want to have equal numbers. If their numbers are too light, they might call an ally to make it more of an even fight. However, if the defender has offended the wormhole community, that's when the attackers will gang up and just remove them with sheer number of force. What was this? Was Interhell reaching out to allies to even up the fight, or was this something where the defender offended the wormhole groups and they were just going to come in for a clean sweep?
From reading what Matterall sent me from their CEO, I couldn't understand some of the broken English, everything, but it seemed like there was a little bit of smack talk or something in the past, at least, that that did lead to the decision for them to go after these guys. So it did seem like there was some kind of backstory to do with why it happened, and some sort of revenge or getting even,
That's
from
that's
what I
usually
read.
the case, isn't it? Right? They always say like, "Ah, they were talking bad about us, so we're gonna show them." That happens a lot. Whether it's true or not, who knows? But
Yeah, well, I mean, everyone's the hero of their own story, I guess. I guess sometimes, I suppose, but I mean, it looks like it was a good fight, and I've got it up now. So Inner Hell and Allies lost 70, just over 72 and a half bill, was their total loss, 196 ships, and the defending crew lost over 296 billion, almost 297 billion, and lost a total of 1,370 ships.
that's pretty big for a wormhole fight, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And judging by the numbers, I mean, it says Team B, so the attacking side had 430, while the defending side had 1,116 in some
Oh,
manner of pilots.
wow.
Wouldn't that include whatever dropped out of the structure?
It could. I'm just looking at the battle report and what it said. I'm just sort of scrolling down a little bit to see exactly. I mean, the list does go on a fair bit, even after you finish in a Hell and Allies. So, and these guys are all piloted ships and doctrines that seem to have had something to do with it. So,
So they were
yeah,
fighting 2-1, really.
essentially.
Well, it depends what those ships are. If it has if the battle report includes all the ships that dropped from the structure when the structure got destroyed, then that's going to skew the defenders' numbers, right? The battle report will say there are far more ships involved in this fight than really there were.
Let's hold your question for a second. We just got raided by Pando's crew. A lot of guys that play and watch PvP with the FC Pando Rollica. I want to welcome you to Talking in Stations. Actually, this is Talking in Stations, the channel, but today in EVE Online is the show that you are watching now. We're talking about Inner Hell's eviction of, what's that group's name?
It is really us.
It is really us. Okay, that's and that's based. It was a giant wormhole fight that essentially happened over the weekend. We didn't know which way it was going to go. We actually had Laura Secco from an FC from Hard Knocks on our Sunday show with CCP Rise when we were interviewing him. We had Laura Secco there to ask some wormhole questions about some of the changes that have happened recently. And while he was on the show, he was actually piloting and moving his people into position to aid Inner Hell in this eviction. Where, what were the numbers again of fighters? It was 2-1. Inner Hell had to fight twice as many defenders, but they managed to win the fight and evict their target, which is amazing. Amazing and not amazing, because Inner Hell's getting a reputation for evicting everybody, whether you fight back or not. So that's what we're talking about just now. Arya, you had a question about the numbers?
Right. I was curious if when the structure gets destroyed and drops the ships, if the attackers destroy the ships, won't that skew the battle report and make it look like the defender had more ships than they really did?
Yeah, that's the question that Karn Molida makes here. It is not 2 times the defenders. That is a misinterpretation of the battle report, right? Because people are constantly reshipping. Is that why?
Yeah, and they're saying that the ships that just get blown up by when the structure dies. So some of these, yeah,
Oh,
so a lot of these frigates and all the random stuff at the bottom
so it could have been even.
are not really included. It was about 250 v 250. I remember seeing like 251 v 250. I think like
Yeah,
it was a pretty even. I believe it was pretty even. But I saw
250
someone say
pilots
something.
each side, says Karn.
Yeah, I saw someone say something about the dreadnoughts and the losses. I mean, that would lead to a lot of losses, but we're sort of getting to the point where undocking dreadnoughts, particularly dreadnoughts, is almost pointless against a Nikatursa fleet, and that with the afterburners and that. Like, we killed a dread the other week, and we didn't even bring in Logi to kill it, and that with the we we had our passive plated Ikatursas with afterburners, and it had subcapital guns and it just couldn't track at all. So it's getting to the point with some of these fleets, particularly that Inner Hell are bringing, where you can undock as many capitals as you want, but carriers are definitely the better option, which they did, um, which was definitely a lot more beneficial to them. But yeah, we're starting to get into a meta where capitals just aren't doing it anymore.
Oh well, the new ships are fitting the. The new ships are smaller and actually can deal out a lot of damage.
And Ikatursus with
Yeah.
the skirmish boost to lower their sig radius and such, it's it's extremely crucial to those fleets.
Is that going to increase the size of wormhole groups since you can fit more people through holes with potent ships, basically?
It's decreasing their signature radius, not their mass.
Oh,
So
sorry.
it
You're right.
doesn't affect how many you can get through a hole. Yeah.
It just means they're harder to hit from the bigger ships.
Yes. Yes.
I see what you're saying. Okay. But I have noticed, have wormhole groups become bigger, or are they about the same size as they have always been?
I feel like it's still much the same, but you've got those couple of groups that have been around for a long time that they just they keep getting bigger, I guess. You still got plenty of those medium-sized groups and that sort of stuff. Like, we're all still out there, but I guess it can be hard to. It just makes it harder, I suppose. But the people that have been around for a long time, HK Laserhawks and in the hell and that, like the recruiting sort of goes for itself, I suppose.
All right. Well, I have collected some information on this fight uh, from some sources that are involved with the fight. But it looked like they looted about 150 to 200 billion. I hope those numbers are correct. And that outweighs by far the amount of money they have lost. Now, there's an interesting thing going on in wormholes right now in February for a few more days until the 24th. You can get a high percentage of the loot that is on a ship that you destroy, much higher than normal, but less than 100%. And so this fight happened in that window. So even the ships that were destroyed on the field were able to be looted, should they have wanted to, pretty at a much higher percentage than usual. And I learned that when a structure blows up, it releases everything that's inside of it in wormhole space. There is no asset safety associated with it. So this was a big payday to the tune of 150 to 200 billion, which is, I think it's a pretty nice payday for taking out another corporation, another alliance. But the defenders were not by themselves. They had friends that were helping them out, right?
Yeah, they had many different groups. You can see Wormhole Society had a Little Red Riding Hood, Little Red Riding Hole, sorry. They had the Nameless Alliance, some of them there,
Yeah.
who have previously been evicted by Inner Hell. Looks
Mm-hmm.
like they had some Mount Trumpet Cavalry, who were the last eviction of Inner Hell. Posse Party. Yeah, there are a lot of different groups that managed to get in and help out.
Well, yeah, there was also some nullsec groups in there were kind of interesting. I think Code was even in there, if I'm not mistaken. It might have been one guy who stumbled upon it, or was an alt or a friend of somebody who was involved with it. Not saying they were helped out in a meaningful way, but there was I think there was Code was in there and somebody else was somewhere.
Goon looks like, I'm just reading off the top of the list. I mean, it says that um, Goon Swarm, Fraternity. Just trying to scroll through to see some. I don't know how involved these guys are, but they're just on the list. Triumphant, just to name a couple that I can see on the list. I don't know how many from each one, but they're just some of the ones that were on the list of the defenders.
Yeah. If you know about this, you're invited to come on the show right now and talk about this. This is a very, very consequential wormhole eviction. I think it's one that we need to spend a lot of time with, really understanding, because it has implications beyond just a typical wormhole eviction. Joining us now is Rift or Mon Lao Lua. How do you say your name?
Hi, Marcel. Marcel is completely fine. It just makes it easier.
1 second. You're a bit far from your mic or something. Can you try that again?
I'm not. My mic love to play. My cats love to play with my mic. So if you can just boost me a little bit, slightly.
I've got you at 200%, which is
That's
my max.
perfect.
But
Yeah, it's still bad. I know.
it's okay. I'll be quiet. But can you tell us what you know about this? First of all, who you are, your background, who you're associated with, and then tell us what you know.
Who I'm associated with? We are pretty much not associated with anyone. I am the CEO of It Is Really Us, and we just got evicted.
Oh, this is your eviction. You got evicted. Okay.
Yeah, I got evicted.
Sorry to hear that, man.
Oh, all good. It was an amazing fight, honestly.
Yeah, I'm looking at it and hearing about it from other wormhole people, and this is a very divisive fight as far as loyalties, and this was one for the history books, really. So that's why we wanted to know more about it. We'll spend some more time with it, but what can you tell us now about this and why it's so important?
I honestly didn't know why it should have been important at all. I always saw us as a small corporation. I didn't even were sure that other people know about us. Like we're too new to have a big impact or have a big name. Actually, we just played the game to have fun. We have zero. That's not true. We have like 2 blues in warble space, and the rest we keep on a NPSI rule normally. And I heard afterwards this was kind of a big thing for everyone, but I actually don't know why, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, you had a lot of people defending you.
Yeah,
Can you talk?
we have friends in Warmo Space, and we called them, which consisted out of 3 corporations, and the rest heard about it and offered help. And I was not in the position to say no to anyone. And from there, it just happened. You know, we didn't call for thousands of people, but we just got offered help from various Warmer corporations. This was overwhelming by itself.
Yeah. All right. I'm sorry. The audience is having trouble hearing you. I can't boost you any higher. So we'll have to figure something out for maybe an interview this weekend or something later where I can get an actual engineer
Maybe TeamSpeak.
or TeamSpeak. Yeah, maybe we can bring you in TeamSpeak. But okay, one last question I'll ask you, and then I'll just repeat it for people who can't hear. Why, from your point of view, did you get attacked by Inner Hell?
Because I think we just showed up a couple of times, but they were on an eviction. They happened to evict the Polish, which is TNA. It's a Polish alliance, and this is one of our long-standing friends. So we showed up for them. And then Parabellum tried to evict Jana Compagnia, which are also Polish, so they are affiliated with the other Polish, and we helped there as well. And I think it was just one time too often for them us interfering. Yeah.
Are you Polish too? Because these are
No, I am German.
German. Okay.
Yeah, you know.
All right. So you think because you helped defend somebody else that was getting evicted that you essentially became the next target?
So I got told by one dude affiliated with NHL that apparently we put our nose in stuff, and that I don't know. That's it actually. Then he called us a blubber, and which is kind of weird hearing this from a NHL dude. And normally we try to always go for a good fight. We are not the 100% kill efficiency guys. Yeah, we're sitting before the eviction. We were sitting at like 74, 75. Now the Gilbert got a little dip, but that is understandable, I think. And it also shows we're also taking fights we are bound not to win. You know, we just want to have the fights, and rather than over blopping a small wormhole corp that is flying a Prudix Navy doctrine, and we're coming when Iki tours us, we just ship down to Enios and YOLO, a few of them. So this is something I don't understand. I know that we are content, and I think we were good content for them. I think the fight itself was a good content for everyone involved. Like no one was salty in the end. A couple of dudes lost some ISK, but you always lose ISK, right? Like you kind of have to prepare living in a warm space. And I
Yeah.
think that's it. I think the one reason the CEO of Innerhealth said in the beginning is like, I don't know, like because they lost Iki Turza. I think this is like a no reason at all. And I think it boils down to no reason, just content, which is a fine enough reason for me, to be honest.
Right, right. And you delivered. It was a great fight.
Yeah, we prepared for it, but not enough. Who would have thought? It was just not enough. We prepared, like we woke up pretty much after we saw what Inhal did to TNA, the Nameless Alliance, and then we started to invest heavily in a fleet that could beat Inhal, because we saw Inhal as one of the main threats against us in Wormhole space at the moment. So we designed this with their Lokis and their Ikitursas in mind.
Well, was it actually a close fight, or did they bring too much in the end with Laser Hawks and Hard Knocks helping Inner Hell out?
I think Inner Hell alone had 150 men on grid, and Laserhawks Hard Knocks walked in like 60, 70 more. And at one point it was overwhelming. They shredded through our fighters, and then we were then it was shooting fish in a barrel, pretty much, for them at one point. I'm pretty sure against Inner Hell it would have been a more balanced fight, but the DPS of the Ikitursas after we were defanged was too much to handle. And we also realized that our subcap fleet was insufficient. They just got alphaed completely. There was like, if you bring that much alpha, you cannot bring anything else except caps, pretty much.
They were saying that you guys had an entire Moonin fleet that didn't undock until toward the end of the fight, and then it warped off to the wormhole. What was the strategy with that?
This were private ships of people who died and had the chance to dock, and then they were given out. It was the last stroke. The whole mutant fleet was 25 ships in total, and it was just the private ships of our member who just throw in everything just to have a mutant fleet to be on the grid and help a little bit out.
Okay, so it was just sort of that little throw together fleet with whatever you had left at the end.
Yeah, we like most of the stuff were repackaged and stored, but we asked the member to just put like we're flying units from time to time and to put this fleet into one hangar, and then we just gave it out pretty much as a it's a nice fleet if you're on a crit and they could outmaneuver the Tenement Lokis and Hell is running. Pretty good, but it was not enough. It was not an additional mutant fleet, it was still pilots in the hole got killed and redocked.
Yeah, yeah, no, that makes complete sense. Yeah, I just remember reading a Hard Knocks member mention it on Reddit, and I just wanted to hear like what 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 it
So,
actually like what your perspective of it was. That's all.
so what we had on field, I think in the one video there was like 200 in fleet. This was not what we had on grid. Yeah, this is including scanning alts, people who never made it in. This is including characters that got locked off and who were AFK. What we had on grid were more like, I would say, 100 to 150. I would say from our side. Yeah. And we actually wrote in after action reports, and we're gonna upload a video and put it together. This is like our, let's say, official view what happened. You know, like you always push it a little bit in the direction. I just try to be as objective as possible. And we're gonna publish it today or tomorrow. My video dude is working on it at the moment.
You're going to put out a
Nice.
video?
Yeah, like of the fight. We also like had it recording.
Oh, I
But
look
we
forward to seeing
gonna
that.
we're gonna make a video with 90% less inner hell propaganda.
Okay. Um, are you going to have a written battle report?
And we do. I'm just gonna let it prove. Some English dude just proofread it for me because English is not my first language.
Right. Oh, let us see that. We want to look at it.
It's not done. I'm going to post it on the video the moment we're going to bring the video online, so you will see it. I'm
okay.
not big of a Reddit dude. Normally don't give a shit because the most people there are cancer.
Yeah,
And
well, give it to us. We'll publish it for you.
I'm not big on the politics side. I never was. The corporation it's a let's say two bigger corps of Hall Control died couple of time ago. That was the New Eden Yacht Club and Pokai. And it is really us pretty much is the remainder of both of them. And from there on, we were like always, we don't want to be in that big political thingy. We just want to fight everyone. And till now, we stayed true to ourselves, and kind of want to stay like this. So just want to keep away from trouble, from politics, because I'm not a fan of it. Otherwise, I would be a Nazi.
Yeah, you moved to wormholes to get away from the politics. There's an interesting question just in the comments that I was curious about as well. Varag asked, "Did you have many opportunities to fight for whole control throughout the entire event?"
No, before the final night, we only had, I would say, between 30 and 40 combat ready pilots in Hull. So there was no chance, because the day Inhale arrived, it was 80 plus they brought. So from this perspective, there was no chance to fight for Hull control.
Yeah, and one thing that I was interested in toward the end, did you at all know that HK and that were coming? And
We guess
did
so.
you have enough people to fight before they got there? Like, could you have controlled the hole before they got there and maybe fought in a hell before they even got the backup?
No, our backup was off EU time zone. So for them, big courtesy to them that they actually stood up, like had a timer and just woke up, because it was way out of their time zone or super early. So we got a lot of help from US time zone corporations, and they couldn't have helped us gaining whole control in there. We just brought them in. It was 4 o'clock in the night for me. Then I just slept, and people only trickled in. And we just hoped for a good fight and that we may stay in the hole afterwards. But it turned out as it turned out.
Oh, cool. That's very interesting. Yeah. Because some of those details, if you're not there, you just don't know. So, very interesting.
Well, Rift, it's nice to meet you. Stick around. We're going to hang out in public chat on TIS Discord. There's the invite in channel. And I want to confirm now. Arya, actually, why don't you confirm what you heard?
So earlier we talked about that change. When you're going through a wormhole, when you hit jump, you activate your prop mod afterwards to increase your mass, and that was changed with today's patch notes. And some members in chat were wondering, was this intentional? Was this not intentional? Because it's not explicitly stated in the patch notes. CSM member Zuki has posted on Reddit a confirmation. He confirms it is intentional. CCP views it as a long overdue exploit fix. So it was not an accidental change.
Oh, they considered an exploit fix. That's interesting. Exploit is considered a strong term for something that's not working as intended. Sometimes people figure out creative ways to use mechanics, and that's different than something being considered an exploit. That means players are taking advantage of something that was broken the whole time. Oh, okay. So thanks very much for clearing that up. So it's not a bug. It's intentional, which means it's going to stay in the game. It's not going to be fixed. It is intentional fixing of something that was, I guess, considered broken. And Mon, I'm sorry I called you Rift. That's the name of the alliance. So your name is Mon Lao. And I'm sorry I can't get his mic any higher. I've cranked everything. What I could do is go into my system and try to work his mic out, but I may end up screwing more things up. So instead what we'll do, we're going to get more information on this fight. Inner Hell versus Rift. An eviction was successful. It was a hell of a fight, but I think it was also very polarizing for people in the wormhole community. So we'll find out more about that in the future. We'll talk about this either tomorrow or maybe a little more on the Sunday show. Make sure we get a good broadcast out about this stuff. But I want to thank all you guys for showing up today, Colby, Arya, and Mon. I appreciate you showing up and telling us your point of view on the eviction of your corporation alliance in wormhole space. We're all going to dump out into public chat. Why don't you guys meet us there? Gave you the address. You can always find us through talkinginstations.com. Look for the Discord. And we are going to wrap up for today and see you tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
We'll go ahead and raid Torvald. Rift, we'll be out in just a second, and then I want to get some information from you and get in touch with you.
Just take your time.